Are you looking for a betting platform with zero restrictions and where you can buy crypto using PHP directly? Look no further than DexWin. The platform is designed to make it easy for you to buy and sell your favorite cryptocurrencies using Philippine pesos with low fees and a user-friendly interface. But that's not all. DexWin also offers you the opportunity to bet on your favorite NBA games and superstars in the playoffs and mix and match parlays to win big. Whether you're a seasoned sports bettor or just starting out, they have everything you need to make the most of your wagers. And with their instant withdrawals, you can quickly and easily get your money when you need it. When you're withdrawing your winnings from sports betting, they make it fast and easy. So what are you waiting for? Join DexWin today and start taking advantage of all the benefits they have to offer. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Navs Effect podcast. And this is a pretty exciting podcast to do because the Miami Heat are in the NBA Finals. And if you've been following this podcast or my work for last few months, you know that I have been quite invested in this Heat playoff run. And someone who I would say has been just as invested and probably even more knowledgeable when it comes to breaking down the X's and O's is Brady Hawk of 5 Recent Sports, one of the best podcasts that discusses all Miami sports. And that's basketball, football, and the Dolphins are playing right now with the Panthers and hockey. That's another crazy story, and Marlin stuff. But Brady Hawk, the lead and Miami Heat writer, I would say NBA writer too for 5 Recent Sports. Brady, thanks for joining me, man. I mean, shit, last few days, huh? 3-0, 3-3, Game 7, trip to the NBA Finals. How are you taking it all in?
It's we were just saying it's been crazy, man. It really is a wild experience from the regular season to predict where you'd be here. Like you said, like the last time I was on here was an off season. There was a little more clarity at that time that it was a possibility they could make a run, maybe because there was an idea that they could make mid-season acquisitions or do something along those lines. Then all of a sudden that doesn't happen. They go into the buyout market. They come in as an 8 seed, and then here we are entering into the NBA Finals. So it's been crazy. But thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man, of course, you're welcome anytime. And I remember that last conversation we had too. We were kind of thinking, okay, so what's the pathway to getting over that hump? Game 7, the loss to Boston last season. And I was like, okay, if you're not gonna make a trade, you gotta wait for Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro to take the next step and develop into the players that could help Jimmy, right? Crazy enough, so Bam Adebayo, at least offensively, now defense, he was still awesome, right? But at least offensively, he kind of loses his shooting touch over the last few games. And Tyler Herro has been out since the start of the NBA playoffs. So instead, it's guys like Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin who ends up taking that next step, develops and just shows incredible improvement in a 1-year span. Okay, I think we need to kind of talk about that before we get into the Denver side of things. Just maybe go back into the series, particularly Gabe and Caleb, because of course, everyone is rightfully praising Caleb for the work he did in securing this Eastern title for Miami, particularly the last game, Game 7, where I thought his shots at the end of the third quarter was, if there was any dagger in a blowout game like that, it would probably be what Caleb did at the end of the third quarter and the start of the fourth quarter. But if you go back to one of the first 2 games, Gabe Vincent, he hits a dagger as well. And Gabe Vincent becomes the starter for the Miami Heat. And the whole last few months, the discussion is, okay, how can the Heat improve in that point guard spot in the offseason? Lowry will be gone. You got to improve in Vincent. Well, Gabe Vincent is making a case to be the longtime starter for the Miami Heat. Championship or not, I think he at least has earned the right to make that conversation, but that's a conversation for later on. But when we look back on it now, what do you think has been the key points that have made Caleb and Gabe much better players? Are they just doing the same thing and shots are going in, or have they gotten better in the margins?
I think Caleb, it sounds weird to say for a role player, but he's almost built for this time of the season just because when you're scheming out a certain team, he's, like we've been saying, the guy you help off of. He's the guy that you're saying Miami has those guys that they face. It's the Marcus Smarts. It's you go down the line. There's guys that you say, well, or PJ Tucker's even for Philly. You say you're letting that guy shoot. That's what teams are saying to Caleb Martin. And he just continues to make them pay. And you see the counters he has. It's not only just the fact that he's shooting well. It's then, okay, well, he hit 2 or 3 threes in the first half. Now we have to fly out on a closeout. Now he's flying by you and he has counters inside the lane. He has great touch. He has great mobility and athleticism. There's all these elements to it. And like I said, throughout the series, the biggest key for Caleb was start of the series. It was Boston. It was Caleb reacting to Boston. It was okay, this guy's helping off. I shoot. This guy runs out of closeout. I drive. Get to the last few games of the series. It was literally Boston reacting to Caleb. It was the flip side of it. It was a total turnaround just because he was so killer. And, looking forward, before I know we'll get into it, but it's another series for Denver. They're going to say the same thing. They're going to help off Caleb. So he'll have similar opportunities. As for Gabe, I've said it before. I don't think there's a tougher job on this Heat team than Gabe Vincent's role. Like, he has an absolute tough job to be a guy that was not originally a point guard, to be running an offense, a pretty sophisticated offense with the kind of motion things they run and the kind of it's not a traditional offense because it's not like point guard brings the ball down. You see Caleb, you see Jimmy, you see Bam bringing the ball down. But it's tough because Tyler's out. He has to emulate so much of what he's doing. And it's not just about the scoring aspect. It's about taking the pull-ups to then open other things up. It's about reacting to certain different coverages in the pick and roll that are being thrown at him, that Tyler was once being the guy that had to deal with it. He just had such a tough role. And then you look on the flip side of the ball where he's having to guard these elite level guards, and he's having to go 94 feet. Like, he is going baseline to baseline with these guys. It's just a tough job, and he has really shown up. And I think it was funny just seeing the way that when he didn't play in Game 5, the reaction to him afterward was just a cool thing to see. It was like the fan base realized how important Gabe Vincent was.
Yeah,
it was like, we know we can talk contracts moving forward, and obviously you had to make the decision, the Max and Gabe contract coming up. And I think this run in general has made it huge, major case that Gabe is going to come back. But I think that Game 5, the game he didn't play, probably made a bigger case than any game he has played. It was like, okay, wait, we need this guy this much? Yeah, it's going to be those two guys have been major in these playoffs, but specifically this Boston series, because this hasn't been a traditional, like last year was Jimmy and Bam and they didn't have any help. It was pretty much an opposite of that in many of the games in this series. It was the Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin's not having any help. So it was an interesting series for those guys.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because so many times in the 4 playoff runs, right, that the Heat have had, there's always that one point in the playoff run where everyone on Heat Twitter is like, why isn't Jimmy being more aggressive? Why isn't Jimmy taking more shots? Why doesn't Jimmy have 25 shots? And in my mind, I'm like, you guys don't listen to Jimmy enough in the press conferences when he says, I trust my guys. If Max is having a hot game, I'm giving him the ball. If Caleb is having a hot game, I'm giving him the ball. And yeah, sure, sometimes you want to see Jimmy, well, definitely Bam, more aggressive, looking for the shot, right? But then there's sometimes you see he's feeding these guys, Gabe and Caleb. And that's why I thought in Game 6, especially, he wasn't force feeding his own shots. Now, he was missing a ton. Let's not get that confused. But he saw Gabe and Caleb like really getting it going. And then you connect it to the fact that Caleb and Gabe always say, you know what, Jimmy gives us confidence. Nick Friedel of ESPN reported this recently too. That locker room believes they can win any game because Jimmy Butler gives them confidence. And I'm sure you know this too. It doesn't help to be better scoring when you have guys like Jimmy and Bam taking the attention of most of the defense most of the time.
Attention sports enthusiasts and loyal Ateneo fans. The peak of excitement may have settled after the UAAP season, but your support for Team Ateneo should never waver. Show your unwavering spirit by proudly donning your favorite Get Blued merchandise. We have amazing news for you. You can now find the most extensive selection of authentic Ateneo gear at both Shopee Mall and Laz Mall. Gear up and embrace the blue and white pride with Get Blued's top-notch apparel. And remember, always buy original.
And I think the funny thing about the interview thing, it gets lost in the mix where they see Jimmy after Game 4 saying we're going to win Game 5. And then after Game 5, he says we're going to win Game 6. And then he says it again. He's not doing it for any other reason than to instill confidence in the rest of his guys. He's not even worried about himself trying to move on and have that mindset for himself. He's always going to have that mindset. He's literally at all times making sure that his role players, or as he said the other day, they're not role players, they're my teammates, that they have the same mindset as him. And that's what's so interesting about this organization, because there's just a linear mindset from the front office to the coaching staff to the players. And I think that's why it's so interesting. I've been saying across this entire run that I've never seen a more mentally stable group of role players in basketball. Just the way that they were, like, starting even before this run. I remember I went to practice before the Bucks series, and it was like those role guys walk around and they're confident. Like they haven't, it's just a confidence to them as an 8 seed to walk in against the Milwaukees of the world and the Bostons of the world and in these opposing arenas and taking every game one, like on the road. Like these role players have just been absolutely killer. And it literally stems from Jimmy Butler's mindset that he's going to instill confidence with them every night.
Yeah, definitely. I've listened to probably like 85 to 90% of the podcast you guys and Five on the Floor have come out with. And one of the lasting things that I believe it was Ethan who really harped on it, he said the Heat don't just have role players, they have alpha role players. And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference between role players who just want to be role players and role players who don't mind like taking the chunk of the responsibility when they have to. And you see that so much. You've seen that so much in this playoff run. Gabe Vincent taking the dagger shot to steal one of the games in Boston. I think that was game 2, if I'm not mistaken. The pull up and with Tatum. Now people say he might have pushed him off. Guess what? Michael Jordan pushed people off. And then also Caleb Martin telling Jimmy Butler, "No, get out of the way. I'm taking a contested corner pull up with Giannis Antetokounmpo on my face in game 4 to." And by the way, they were down at that point, and he was like talking his shit after that. And you can just feel Jimmy's personality just blending to the whole team, the trash talking, the guts, the bravery. And it's incredible. And I think that's what makes Miami ultimately most dangerous, right? I mean, for all the talk of Bam and Jimmy and playoff Jimmy and Spoelstra's greatness, Max Strus, would you be surprised if Max Strus had a 7 3-pointer game in the NBA Finals? I don't think you would, right? I don't think any of us who've been following this team would. Would you be surprised if Gabe scored 28 in like a random game 4 at home? Or if Duncan had like 12 points in the quarter? Or if Caleb kept averaging 20 points a game? No, because I think the strength of this Heat team right now doesn't just lie on their best players, but actually the overall attack. And to some degree, I just can't shake the feeling that losing Tyler and Vic slotted the players in their rightful roles.
It's funny, you're talking about all of the players down the roster. It's like, if you go down the entire Heat roster, every single one of those players has had a moment. Like, I've been saying this for a while. It's like you go down and it's like last year, that was not the case. There was guys on that roster where like, you need more from him. You need a lot more from the Kyle, or you need a lot more from this guy, or Duncan's not playing, or even Caleb wasn't playing in last year's game 7. You go on the roster now, it was like, well, Haywood Highsmith comes in and he gets defensive stops and rips Tatum and goes in the other direction.
They finally benched Zeller. Oh my god, man! Finally,
and even Zeller is like, you can make a case like he's been bad, but he's had a moment or two. Like, he had a big block in one of the games that was big. He had an altercation with Julius Randle that I thought sparked some like mental things in the Knicks series. Like, you go down the roster and it's like they've utilized every guy down the line. And then you see a guy like Kevin Love, who was another guy that has made an impact, a major impact in this playoffs. And then all of a sudden he gets replaced by a guy like Haywood Highsmith in the Celtics series, or Caleb Martin in the Celtics series. And he's on the sideline. He's their biggest fan. And it's like, that's what this is. Like, that's what this team is right now. And I think that's a big part of this. I know I always look into schematics, but there's things that transcend a lot of this. And that's part of it. And it's you just have a team that it's not the same as last year. I know the team in Spo always harps on that. It's like, it's a different year. It 100% is, because this is a different team and a different scenario than last year, just with that ability to go down the roster and look at the depth. And then obviously the only major difference from last year is the Caleb for PJ thing. And as I've been saying, you're seeing a whole lot more offensive versatility with this team in the postseason than you did last year. So that was kind of feels like a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, one of the reasons why Boston's defense this season, aside from the fact that Jaylen Brown just had some more lazier possessions than he's had in recent years, which I found very odd. But on top of that, too, Miami was no longer playing handicapped on offense. They were trotting out lineup against Boston last year with like Kyle, Vic, PJ, Jimmy, Bam. And honestly, compared to the spacing and the movement and the multiple dynamics they had now with Caleb, Gabe, Jimmy, Bam, and then you slot one of the other guys there, Max, or maybe Haywood or someone, it just feels more dynamic. And that's why their offense felt more dynamic too. And you were right about each guy getting a moment in the series, because, you know, game 5, we remember Jimmy's shot that sent the game into overtime, and then the trash talking of Drew and the overtime shots. But Kevin Love was instrumental in that 4-quarter comeback in game 5. He hit like 2 3-pointers, I think, when they were down 16. And then Kevin also had some moments against the Knicks. I thought Kyle was amazing against the Knicks. That was Kyle's series, game 1 in particular, after Jimmy got hurt. And like you said, Duncan coming in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Haywood like just showing something in game 5, so that when the time came in game 7 for him to have like 2 or 3 plays, he was ready for it. And you know, you were right. Zeller in New York too, I thought he had some good moments there. And defensively, we just know what this team is made of.
LaSalle fans and Animo supporters, the crown is back in Taft. Now is the best time to secure the most incredible DLSU merchandise in the market to celebrate the Lady Spikers title conquest of Season 85. Green-Blooded's Championship t-shirt is something you do not want to miss out on. It comes in 3 different colors with the name of each champion spiker on the back, names that will be remembered forever. What better way to celebrate this unforgettable season? So visit Green-Blooded on Shopee now and show off your Animo spirit. Now, if there's one squad who can argue that they have the same merits as the Heat, it would be Denver. I mean, if we're being real, the defense, the ball movement, the playoff superstar, the veteran coaching, they even have a home court advantage that I think they have that Miami might not have as well. So I know you did a mini threader about this recently already, but when you look at that Denver-Miami matchup, what's the first thing that really jumps out to you?
It has to be, number one is dealing with an absolute offense that is just unstoppable. It seems like you look at their regular season numbers, it transcends to the playoffs, and they're just so hard to deal with because you have to pick your poison with that team. It's like, do you deal with Nikola Jokic and help down off these guys and force him to be a playmaker, and he's going to make those passes? Or do you stay home on shooters and you say Nikola Jokic beat us, kind of? Like there's a dynamic here. And then there's obviously the Jamal Murray factor. Do you play drop and let Jamal Murray get into his pull-ups? Do you switch a lot and let Jokic kind of deal with switches, and now you're kind of over helping on different things, and now the ball's swinging, and now they're in their motion offense, and the ball movement's peaking. So there's so many things defensively that we're wondering that Spo can get to. But on the offensive side of things, this is probably Miami's cleanest matchup in terms of on paper, things that they can get to. This one makes the most sense to me. There's a similarity, I guess, to the first round against Milwaukee, because it's kind of similar looks. The only difference is you don't have an elite rim protector like Brook Lopez in this one, and you don't have elite kind of screen navigator like Drew Holiday that is going around these screens. So it's making it easier on paper than it should be. So you're having the ability to kind of get into certain pull-ups that you weren't able to get against Boston. I think one of the biggest things about this series, I said it after the Boston series, the Jimmy Butler Bam Adebayo pick and roll was going to be the downfall of that Eastern Conference Finals. They totally flattened them out. They were switching Horford out, and he couldn't get to his spots. Bam has a smaller guy on him. The post-ups were not working. It was unworkable at certain points of that series. And now I look into the Denver series, and I'm saying Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo pick and rolls are going to be the reason. If they win this series, would probably be the reason that Jimmy and Bam pick and rolls are the ones that are leading them there, because there's certain pull-ups they can get to, there's certain matchups they can get to, and ideally in the Heat's offense, you want to move Jokic around as much as possible. If you could keep him in the deep drop, you have pull-ups. If he starts playing a little bit higher up to the screen, you have the pocket pass available, and then that's why I put it on Twitter yesterday. My biggest key to the series is Bam with the 4-on-3s backside, because they're going to put 2 on the ball. They're going to play Jokic up higher in the pick and roll at the level of the screen. Bam is going to have to make decisions constantly on those kind of half-court fast breaks almost, because you have an advantage with a player with a 4-on-3. You have to make a quick decision. You're going to have to get to your pull-up if you feel confident. You're going to have to make decisive plays, just trying to make those kickouts, make those backdoor cuts, and it's in a split second. Like it's not one of those things that you can really think about for too long, but this is a team that is not known for their rim protection. And obviously, if you have their biggest player on the floor, Nikola Jokic, that's the guy that is flashing high on the 2 on the ball. You have guys like Jamal Murray or Caldwell Pope that are kind of their helper. So Bam can open things up for them offensively. There's obviously a bunch of different things that they can get to, but I think the overall point is that on paper, this is a clean offensive series, should be for Miami, ideally.
Okay, so I'm going to lay out 3 points for you here, and I want you to give me your perspective on each one. So my first point is Miami, like you said, they're going to involve Jokic in as many pick and rolls as possible, whether that's on the ball or off the ball, try to get him to go out, go back in, with the purpose of maybe trying to tire him out a little bit to maybe mitigate some of that offensive production. Second point, would Miami go guarding Jokic 1-on-1? Be like, okay, Bam, you take him. Let's make him a scorer. Let's not try to make him too much of a playmaker, right? Because I think it was Bam who said after Game 7 that when he was asked what would be a key to limiting Jokic, and he mentioned limiting the assists, the playmaking. And so that's my second point. Now, of course, the risk to that is Jokic getting favorable mismatch on switches. And my third point, which falls directly in line with what you said, because the video shows that the Nuggets have Jokic level the screen, which will give Bam, who I think is ultimately a better version of Draymond Green, those 4-on-3 opportunities to kick the ball out to shooters. Now, Denver has enough length to close out, have crisp rotations, but they have shown the ability sometimes to be quite leaky on their defense, especially with rotations from now and then. So give me your thoughts on those 3 points.
So I'll say on dealing with Jokic in matchup wise and the Bam thing, it's hard to say that just Bam and Jokic going 1-on-1 all the time, because he's going to get in foul trouble if that's the case. So
Sure.
what do they do matchup wise? My answer is, I've been saying all along heading up to this series that I just don't think at any point in the series that they have a defensive base. I think it's a possession by possession thing that then they're going to mix it up. Then all of a sudden they're going to play drop and kind of let Jamal Murray operate a little bit. Then all of a sudden the next possession they're switching out and Jimmy's probably fronting and they're sending help backside, which is not a spot you want to be in too often, but they'll mix it in. The zone, I don't expect a lot of it, but there's slots of the game where they can use it. I personally think Haywood Highsmith's their backup 5 in the series, just because Aaron Gordon's Denver's backup 5. And in those periods of time, that means Jokic is off the floor. And you can go to zone in those minutes. And what is Haywood Highsmith always in defensively whenever he enters? It almost feels like always he's enters and they're in zone. So that feels like a guarantee for me that we'll probably see that at some point. So, and then the Bam thing, to your point, is, like I said, I think that's a big aspect of this. And then you're obviously going to have to be, I guess, a little creative. Obviously, it's not just going to be Bam making those 4-on-3s over and over, and they have to get creative with it. I think another way they can get creative is using Jimmy as a screener. And that was kind of my point yesterday, was that I think that is the big wrinkle for Spo in this series, where he's going to start. First of all, the regular season Heat Nuggets film is pointless. Like, if you look at it, none of it matters. There's points where I said Jimmy is
Jamari Bouye was playing.
Yeah, see, there was a 3-man bench group of Boye, Highsmith, and Orlando Robinson. I'm watching Bones Highland cook Miami, and I'm watching Jimmy Butler just go bucket after bucket on DeAndre Jordan. So it's like, none of this matters. All of that is pointless. But there's opportunities with Jimmy as a roller and as a slip guy, just because if they put 2 on the ball and a shooter, now Jimmy's working these 4-on-3s. It's not as much the same as Bam. It's just to make things easier on him, going to the rim on the short roll against a team that is not going to be the same as Boston in terms of the rim protection that I said before. Like, they're not going to be swarming as much as Boston. Jimmy should be able to get to his spots around the rim and be able to finish a lot better than we saw in that last series. So those are just some of the things to look for, I'd expect. But to your point before, the big decision-making is going to be defensively, just because this is a 2-time MVP they're dealing with. You could compare it to Embiid in the Philly series, because Spo has always been good against Embiid in Philly, but it's not the same thing, because this is a guy that can just beat you in so many different ways, and you can't really box him in.
That's true. And one thing about Jokic that I would be absolutely fearful for if I'm the Heat is, this guy is an incredible offensive rebounder too. And he can, like, if the Heat go zone or the rotations get mismatched, cross switches everywhere, Jokic is going to crash offensive rebounds. That's number 1. And number 2 is he can do what Bam does, which is the bust out dribbles and force incredible mismatches in the blink of an eye. And you get him to do that like 2-3 straight possessions, you're looking at the possibility of a 6-7-0 run in Denver, hypothetically too, where suddenly everything can come crashing down. Now, you did say, though, that Boston possessed a bit of a better defensive matchup than Denver does. Now, of course, the statistics agree with that too. But in terms of Kyle Lowry, see, the thing is, Kyle struggled the last few games of the Boston series, right? But right before that, he was almost as important as Bam in some of these games and helping the Heat win. So what's Kyle's ultimate most advantageous contributions in the series against Denver?
I would say it's a lot of the stuff that we were talking about with Gabe to start. I feel like they're going to need him to basically hit pull-ups. I think that's number 1. You just have to be able to kind of make them pay. And if Kyle Lowry can move Jokic around in the pick and roll, that is a win for Miami. That is an absolute win, because that's obviously is the start of a lot of their offense. Number 2, I would say this matchup is basically who can get to their motion offense more, who can have better movement off ball movement, all of that type of stuff. Who can do that more? Because these are 2 teams that do it a ton. Obviously, Denver does it in a very unique way, because they have a guy that is just an absolute killer as a passer and can beat you in so many ways, and they're just constantly moving. He can thread the needle like no other. But Miami's found ways to do it in different ways too, just off gravity. Like they've found ways to run these Duncan Caleb pin downs where if they can get two on either one of them to fly and have miscommunication, it's a great look coming. And Bam can be used as that playmaker. So Bam as a playmaker is going to be important in that range as well. But Kyle Lowry, to your point, is what can get them into their motion offense. If he can kind of find that type of range. And we've seen him, I talked a ton about Jimmy in the pump fakes in that Boston series, and it's just tough to do anything around the rim. It was the same thing for Kyle. Kyle didn't have clean looks around the rim. In this series, he possibly can. Can he get a ton of paint touches and stuff around the rim to force good looks? That'll be a question. It's just, this is a series as well where experience is going to probably kick in.
Yep.
This is why Kyle Lowry is going to be looked to kind of have that type of, I guess, have fingerprints all over the game. This is a new experience for some of these guys. Guys like Gabe Vincent, that's the starting point guard right now, was sitting on the bench watching it all happen in the bubble. Like these are guys that haven't been in this spot. So the veterans are going to be key. They just are. And we'll see what Kyle's able to do. But if he's able to hit shots, and he's had moments in this series, I mean, in this playoff run as well, as we know. But even in that game 7, like this past game 7, he had a big shot, some big shots early in that second quarter. And he was making some passes on the back cuts and everything, that he has a rhythm with a lot of these guys like Caleb and Duncan. So if they can get their movement in cuts and all that stuff working, Kyle's going to be huge.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like if the Heat does win this series, it feels more like a Kyle Lowry series and a Gabe Vincent series from that position. And that's not to say that Kyle is going to be definitively better than Gabe, or that Kyle should take more of the chunk of the responsibility that Gabe does. I just feel in terms of those situational, you probably know this, like the fourth quarter, 3.5 minutes left, it's a 4-point game, and you need someone to make a good decision or hustle play to create multiple possessions to maybe cut the lead. I feel like that's where Kyle is going to come in and contribute a little bit. I have to say too, I like how Kyle is fit since the bench move. I know you guys have discussed it a lot, and it just feels so instrumental because the early signs were there. When you think about it, Kyle was at his best last season when they were the 1 seed during the games that Jimmy and Bam missed. And I think there were some games this season too, like the Minnesota game comes to mind, where Jimmy and Bam were absent and Kyle goes back to suddenly looking like Kyle. Now, there's a Tyler Herro question to all of this. And I have some mailbag questions for us to answer later, but this was one of the questions, but I want to bring it up now. It's been reported by Chris Haynes that Tyler Herro might make his comeback by game 3. Now, look, we know where Tyler's good at. He can generate points on pick and roll. He can score pull-ups. He can hit clutch shots. He can rebound well for a guard. He can pass the ball when he's in that mood where he wants to be looking for teammates. He can also be targeted on the other end on defense. And Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic will be licking their chops with the chance to target a Tyler Herro coming back from a major injury. Now, this has been a low-key kind of topic over the last few weeks. Where would Herro slot in if he comes back? And I think you kind of took your stand here where you feel Herro can be helpful if he does come back. So maybe you can tell me like how you feel about that whole situation.
Yeah, there's obviously question marks with what he'll look like. There's obviously question marks when you have a guy that breaks his hand on his shooting hand and then is going to be thrown into the fire in the NBA Finals to make plays. There's obviously those question marks. But this idea that he can't be utilized and just to see if he's somewhat a version of himself offensively is just wild to me. Like they can use him in so many different ways. It's not going to be a major role either. I think I think people are worried about the fact that he's going to throw off their offense that they figured out across this run and kind of put it in a negative direction just because they have a rhythm. But I don't see that happening, especially in this series. They need his skill set fits this series. Maybe against Boston, it doesn't schematically. But you see what Boston was able to do to Jimmy and Bam, not just matchup wise, but because the Tyler Herro as a third option they're not worried about him. Like if Tyler last year, think back to last year, Jimmy was able to do his thing. Bam at times was able to do his thing because Tyler was seeing so much attention. Yep. So obviously the gravity factor is a big thing. The pull-up shooting that I talked about before could be major for Tyler Herro. But then there's this part where I mentioned the 2 on the ball stuff, where that's going to be a big hub of Miami's offense in this series. But that can only get you so far. When you have your Duncan Robinson and Max Strus of the world that are getting 2 on the ball and they're making the pocket pass, that is just a very small part of their offense. How do you open that up? Well, if Tyler Herro comes back and he's seeing 2 on the ball, he can operate out of it. Like he's not a guy that is just simply making the pocket pass. He can extend plays. He can do different things to give their offense a different look, where that is the part that they're going to have to utilize. That is the part that they're going to need. And look, he's just an energizer. Like I'm picturing the fact of Tyler Herro coming off the bench, entering in game 3 at home.
Oh yeah.
Building is going to be going crazy. And Tyler Herro loves those moments. Tyler Herro absolutely loves those moments. And I think if you're going to put money on something, it would be the fact that Tyler's probably hitting his first shot of that game just because he's going to be feeling it from the crowd and playing into it. And then obviously, I know your point about the defensive stuff. The questions is, I'm not too worried about being hunted just because I'd be more worried in a Boston series about it being hunted when you have multiple wings and creators. I think there's ways to get around it with a Jamal Murray and Jokic pairing. I think they can find ways to not be worried about that. The question is, they've pretty much put one below average defender on the floor at all times across this run. Now you're not taking Duncan out. You're not taking Max out. You're playing Tyler next to either one of those two. So you have to find ways to make it work. You have to find different lineups. And obviously that's more on Spo than it is on Tyler. Spo's going to be the one to figure that type of stuff out. But I'm not too worried about that, to be honest. I think there's more of a need for his offense than to be worried about his defense.
Yeah, you know, the thing about Tyler too, and you harped on this earlier, it's that if he does come back, he's not going to. I don't think he's going to be starting right away. I don't think Spo is going to put him in that position, and I don't envision him playing 38 to 40 minutes a game. Maybe not even like above 30. My question is, okay, if Herro comes back, whose minutes are you going to take away from? Goes back to what you said, right? Because right now I don't feel comfortable with the thought of Caleb Martin playing less than 36 minutes a game. I mean, with the way he's playing, are you gonna take away Gabe's minutes? I think Gabe is pretty instrumental too, and he's a plus on defense. So I think it might be a combination of Duncan, Max, or Kyle. Maybe a little bit of Haywood, but at this point he's your backup 5, and you're not taking away from Bam or Jimmy. So maybe it's a game by game thing. Okay, get Tyler out there maybe early in the second quarter when Jokic isn't in the game, or Jamal isn't in the game. See how does he look his first 2 minutes? He's springy. Does he look a little rusty? Okay, pull the plug if it just doesn't look good right away. Do you think that's how Spo is kind of going to proceed with it? And by the way, to your point, if Herro hits his first shot coming off the bench in game 3, in the first live finals game in Miami in 10 years, that crowd is going to go wild. They are going to play Pepas before the fourth quarter. And if he hits one of those patented Tyler Herro clutch shots late in the fourth quarter, every single person in that crowd is going to explode.
100%. 100%. So the one thing I'll say, you mentioned kind of the spot minutes thing. 100%, I don't see him starting when he comes back. I don't see him playing 38 to 40 minutes. I think it's probably like in the 20s. They're just going to work him in, see if he can be a spark. And all of a sudden, if the hand looks great and he's playing great, obviously there's a different conversation to be had at that time. But just on the surface right now, I think that's what you're going to expect. And then, yeah, the Spo is going to utilize him in different lineups. They're going to see, you mentioned kind of spots to play him in. I actually think there's more of a willingness to play him when Jokic is in, just because I feel like he's more of a guy that can manipulate him in pick and rolls and a guy that can get to pull-ups. Whereas if they're in those backup 5 at Aaron Gordon minutes and they're switching everything, it makes things harder for him.
He has struggled with those switches over the years.
Yeah, he has to just do things differently, it feels like. He just has to get to different spots. And if you're trying to make things easier for him, I think you play him in those lineups, and that's obviously not a hard thing to do because Jokic is going to be on the floor for most of the game. So yeah, like I said, it's gonna be on Spo to kind of figure things out. The question is, I don't think they'll be afraid to pull the plug either. Like if let's say in the opposite direction, we're looking at things positively, but if he doesn't look good and the hand's still bothering him and it's a pain tolerance thing and it still doesn't look great, then you tried. Like it's nothing against that part of it, but I just feel like if he is a portion of what we know he can be utilized to some degree. And let's be honest, like just on a personality side, it would be cool to see him play a part in this run.
Oh,
like
definitely.
I think it would just be because as much as we talk about kind of the first game, him going down, he knows and everybody knows that he was not going to get any credit on anything until he did something in the postseason. He knew that. He talked about that. And obviously, he comes out in that game 1 against Milwaukee, plays really well, gets hurt, and obviously he doesn't have a chance to kind of prove himself on the stage. Him just playing any type of role just in this finals, I think would just be really just a cool story. Just would be a cool thing for him personally. And like I said, I really do believe that he could utilize him.
He struggled in the past, those traps off the pick and roll, particularly the Philadelphia series last year comes to mind. And we know that Denver is going to send 2 in the ball, have Jokic level the screen. Are you concerned how he will have to react to that when he uses ball screens?
My question is, a guy like Tyler Herro that hasn't played in weeks and his shooting hand is messed up, will Denver even throw two on the ball at him? Like that's kind of where I wonder. I wonder if they're not going to be as worried as they were last season, like teams were all in that run. I think at least early in the series when he comes back, they're going to let him just see what he can do shot wise. They're going to see how he can kind of get to his pull ups. If he's hitting, then they'll adjust from there. And if his minutes go up, obviously they're going to have to do different things. But yeah, that's the question, because as much as we talk about the shooting, the ball handling is another factor. It's like that right hand, like you have to be able to kind of get out of those traps, like you're saying. You have to be able to kind of extend plays. And if he has that, that's why I said that I think that's the big difference maker between him seeing it and Max and Duncan seeing it. Not that it's any better that when Tyler sees it, it's just that you get a different look. And they're going to defend it differently, as much as they cut off Duncan on a handoff, or when Max comes off a pin down, they're throwing to. It's just all different looks, and give Spo as many weapons and offensive versatility as possible. And I think anybody's going to trust him in that range.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I've mentioned before, when Tyler is looking there to be a playmaker and not just looking to score, there's a different dimension in his game that people don't see now. Some of that is because maybe of his role in this team. But I think we are going to get to a point in his career, whether that's in Miami or somewhere else, where he's going to be given an expanded role of being more of a high usage guy, and we're going to see more of that playmaking. Now, just to add to your other point too, when we look at this last 4 years, by the way, the Miami Heat, 37 playoff wins since 2020. That's the most in the NBA. They've been the only team in the NBA since 2020 to make the NBA Finals twice as well. Now, as this run has passed by, we have started looking at the last 4 years as, okay, that's the Bam and Jimmy generation, right? You know, those are the two best guys, right? And Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, Gabe Vincent, these guys only really started contributing 2022, 2023. But you had guys like Goran Dragic, Kendrick Nunn, Kelly Olynyk in the 2020 and 2021 seasons, which is kind of part of like that first batch of this current Heat generation. So what's been the constants, right? So the constants have been Jimmy, Bam, Spo, and Udonis as like the locker room presence. And that's supposed to include Tyler too, but because Herro has been out for this playoff run, for better or worse, he has been kind of pushed to the side a little bit, right? So I agree with your point that it would be very cool to see Tyler play some role, maybe not as big a role as everyone envisioned, but some role if they do in the championship. Now, look, Brady, I know you have a very schematic, analytical way of looking at the games, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why you're a great reporter of the Miami Heat. But you have been invested, I would say, like Ethan is, like Greg is, like Alex is, like I am, like so many other guys covering the team is, like the Miami Heat beat guys. To some degree, you're invested in this team. So when you just look at this run, 8 seed, beating Milwaukee, beating New York, the play-in situation, second 8 seed ever to make the NBA Finals, first play-in team to ever make the NBA Finals, and not just beating the opponents, but looking like the straight up better team. Now, the national media will never admit that, but when you just think about that run, how do you reflect on that? I mean, I know there's still finals coming up, but Jesus, that's crazy, isn't it?
Oh, it's insane. And yeah, the national media is never going to every team has beat themselves. Miami hasn't even won a series yet. So we're still waiting for Miami to win their first series, obviously. But yeah, it's been a weird dynamic, because as much as we talk about national media and kind of reacting to it, I don't think anybody thought this would happen at the time. Like, I remember we were sitting there at the Chicago game, and we were just like, man, are we going to get to cover like one playoff series? Like, are we going to get to cover 2 home games? Like, it's probably going to be a sweep, but can we just at least go to 2 of them? And then here we are entering the NBA Finals, and it's like, I don't even, there's different ways to characterize it. I think a lot of it, so much of it is going to be talked about from the Jimmy Butler perspective. And I think rightfully so, because man, is he been incredible. I just think the way he's reacted to each series, I keep saying the way he comes out aggressively against the Bucks, and he drops 56. He just keeps scoring, and he has that mindset. He goes into the Knicks series where all they do is throw 4 defenders at him. He's like, okay, I'll be a playmaker. And my role guys, they're just going to continually hit threes and shots and all this stuff, and they're going to step up. And then we see a Celtics series where Jimmy Butler kind of trolls his way to a finals, because there was portions of the series where he had that scoring mentality. then he was kind of nowhere to be found at certain points, and everybody was screaming for him to kind of do certain things, and he was going on the podium, still guaranteeing wins, and everybody's freaking out.
I didn't know if he was sounding confident or just insane. Like, I had no idea. Like,
Probably
is
both.
this? Yeah, true. Yeah, please go on.
It was probably a little bit of both. It was like I said, he just tries to instill confidence in everybody. But man, now that they end up here, as much as to that point though, as much as I sit here and talk about Jimmy, they've needed every guy. Like, they've literally you talked about this generation being the Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo generation. We're entering the Caleb Martin generation because like, we're just seeing these guys step up and do these type of things. And Spoelstra deserves a ton of credit because he was getting a ton of heat throughout the regular season for rotational things, or we're looking at this roster and we're seeing them lose these games, and every game's a clutch game. And when he comes in and says they're making their like they're I don't even remember what he said. He said something along the lines of like they're making their money worth or whatever. And everybody thought he was crazy. And it's like all that stuff added up to this point, and he has everything in his bag to utilize. And I felt like he has outcoached every single coach he's faced across these first three series. So it's not just Jimmy. As much as I want to sit here and everybody's going to talk about Jimmy, they've needed every guy on this team and every part of the staff and everything down the line. So it's just been an insane run. And the fact that it's not over yet and we're getting ready to watch an NBA Finals involving this 8-seeded Heat team, it just makes no sense. It makes zero sense.
You know, I have a quick story to tell you. So game 6, right? The Derek White game winner. Now, I'm watching the stream on NBA League Pass. And NBA League Pass, I would say, is about 5 to 10 seconds delayed if you're keeping track of the score, like let's say with ESPN scoreboard, right? So Jimmy hits the 3 free throws. And I don't normally do this, but I couldn't help myself. I open up the ESPN scoreboard and I see it says final 103 to 102 Heat. So there I'm like, holy shit, they're going to the finals. And then I watch the play 10 seconds later on League Pass, and Derek White hits the game winner. And then I'm like, wait, no way. I mean, that does not count, right? The review hasn't happened yet. And then I check the score, and then it says 104, 103 final. And I'm like, crap. And I kid you not, for 1 second, I get my hands, I put them on my head, and I am just there in silence for like 5-10 minutes. And I think I must have said no like 3 times, because there is no way this is how it's supposed to end. The Jimmy missed shot last year, being so close, and then this team on an 8-seed run up 3-0. Are they gonna blow a 3-0 lead? And then I start thinking back to the whole season. You know, there's a Josh Hart game winner, and then there's the Julius Randle game winner, and then there's the Tyrese Halliburton game winner. I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2 more game winners there. And then you add Derek White game winner in game 6 of the playoffs too. And then you're just thinking, shit, can they win game 7 in Boston? And they obliterate them, just destroy them, like suck the life out of the TD Garden and just leave everyone speechless. And I think I'm at the point where they have been through so many of this heart-wrenching games. You know, 2020, the bubble, they lose Bam and Goran. They push LA to 6. And that hurt, because you're thinking, just what if those 2 guys were healthy throughout the whole finals? Next season, they get swept by the Bucks. And you're thinking, what if they didn't have the shortest off-season ever and they didn't get hit with COVID, right? And then the next year, you think, what if Jimmy makes a shot? And these thoughts were playing in your head over and over and over again. And then now you're thinking, okay, they got to win this, right? I mean, this has to be for them. And I think there's such a confidence in this team now. And we're going beyond analytics and schematics here. We're going like almost like a spiritual level of the game. And I'm thinking like, they have to win this, right? I mean, this is it, right? The 8-seed run, the story, 4 years of heartbreaks, all the close games, all the clutch games, everything this team has been dealt with, injuries, setbacks, everything. Is this their time, Brady? And that's my fancy way of asking you, do you have Miami winning the NBA championship?
I haven't even given a prediction yet, but I think I would lean Miami in 6 or 7 right now. I just would. I think there's certain things they can get to. And like you said, there is certain things that transcend schematics. I even said it after game 6. I didn't think schematics even mattered much in game 7. It was all mentality. It was the whole topic was for everybody was like, how do you recover from that type of game? Similar to you, I was at that game and I thought they won. I didn't even see the tip in at first. I didn't understand what everybody was standing around for. I didn't even get to see it. I have it on my phone. But either way, they were able to, kind of my earlier point when I said this team is just so mentally stable. That game 7 was an absolute example of that. Like, they coming out and be able to do that is just summarizes this team. And now you head into an NBA Finals where I look at the video in the locker room after that game 7. Every player on that team has that Eastern Conference Finals shirt on, but there's one guy that doesn't, and that's Jimmy Butler. That he has this mindset that he's there's one goal and there's one goal only, and that's an NBA championship. And this team is so focused on that yeah, you could celebrate for because that's a big accomplishment what we just saw, and they need to celebrate that. But then after that night, when they wake up in the morning yesterday, back to business, because that's the way that they've had it. So heading into this series, I do have Miami winning right now, just because of a lot of the reasons. It's scary to say because I said that the offense, like, it should be clean, and that we know Denver's offense is absolutely going to be clean as well. And does Miami like to play in these offensive battles? Absolutely not.
Nope.
They want to be in the mud as much as possible, and I can't really picture in my head this being in the mud for much of the series, just because Denver just hasn't been in the mud, it feels like, by any points on this entire season. So can they match the scoring? I think they can at times, but they just have to find ways, at least for small pockets of the game, to get it in the mud and do things like turn it over and stuff. But yeah, I think this is a long series though, but I do think Miami finds a way to pull it out.
It feels like if the series does go in the mud, then Miami has to make it a long series. Or that's how it's going to go as the series progresses, once Spo maybe gets enough tape to study and prepare. Because I think those first 2 games in Denver are going to be like high scoring, high octane games. And I know Miami's going to lose at least one of those first 2 games. Now, if Denver hasn't lost a home game all playoffs, I would go as far as to say that Denver hasn't been faced with any adversity in the postseason. No, definitely nothing close to like nearly blowing a 3-0 lead and mentally having to like bring yourself back up from how you lose game 6.
Yeah.
If Miami steals one of those 2 first games in Denver and can get it to at least 2-2, 5-6-7, we already know they can win on the road. Do you think that's the blueprint right there? At least get it to 2-2 after 4 games?
I mean, yeah, that would not be a bad situation, obviously. And then if it's 2-2, you have to win another one on the road. So that's going to be a tough environment to play in. But look, this team has walked into every single series in 1 game 1. It's not, it's just a very odd thing. Like, it really is. And that's why comparing it to past runs, it's like, we haven't seen anything like this, because it's just the fact that this is an 8 seed. Yeah, we can throw that around. But it's the fact that they don't have home court advantage and they just keep walking into these buildings and doing it. And it's like, I until I see otherwise, I'm not going to not believe it. And I think there's almost a variation to it where I feel like they feel like they're playing with house money. We don't have to win either of these games, let's say, in these first 2. So they play free. They know that, and they come out and they perform, and they've ended up stealing 1. And then once they steal 1, they start feeling really good. And as much as we see that Boston-Miami dynamic where it feels like neither team can ever win at home, the Heat have been really good at home on this playoff run, just as a whole. Like, they've played really well in their home building. What is it? I think 1 loss,
2 losses. Games
Is
4
it
and
2?
5. Games 4 and 6 against Boston, I think. Yeah. Games 4 and 6 against
Correct.
Boston.
Yes. Because see, I'm still thinking that Derek White tip in. But excluding the Boston series, they've been good at home. So if you could steal 1, you feel good about going back to your place. And then obviously an environment in the NBA Finals is going to be incredible. So yeah, if you can get it 2-2, I mean, yeah, that would be ideal. But I just can't picture this team. I mean, I say that, but I can't picture this team doing anything on this run. They find ways to do things. But going down 2-0 and operating from that point of view would be really tough. You have to probably try and steal 1 early. And I have a good amount of trust in them doing that. It does not feel like a wild thing to state. Like, they've shown they can do it. I just wonder how much the altitude is going to play into it. I wonder how much this team has not been good in Denver. It feels like ever. Like, it's just not been a building they've ever been good at.
Yep.
It's just, I remember just thinking back to all the Heat Nuggets games. Like, I don't remember even like many close games. I know this past one was close, but it was a weird game anyway, because most of the guys didn't play and stuff. But this is a new situation. Miami likes these new situations. There's no Boston. There was things to grab from the past. So we're like, okay, we've done this before. We've done this in the bubble. We've done this last year. This is a new adventure. They've never played this team. Spo's never had to scheme around in a Nikola Jokic type. So it's gonna be fun. But yeah, getting it early in the series and stealing one would definitely be an ideal situation.
Two things. One, if Miami does win game 1 in Denver, I'd have to double check this, but I think they would be the first team in NBA history to win every game 1 on the road of every series in the NBA playoffs, which
That
for
sounds
some,
right,
yeah, sounds about right for this batch of Miami Heat, right? And number 2, I infinitely trust the Miami Heat better when no one expects them to win rather than when people think they are about to win. Because the moment they need to win, it's like they don't win. Now, all right, let's get to some mailbag questions here. Now, there's a question I have from another Heat fan here, and Justin, who wants to ask: do you think Kevin Love will start?
I don't, and I could see a situation where he can, because there's a case to be made that you throw him on Jokic, you throw Bam on Aaron Gordon, and have Bam help over and do it, kind of just be an innings eater. So I think he can play in certain pockets of the game where they throw him in there just to kind of do some things. But I don't think he starts. I think we're at a point now. We had the conversation about Caleb where, oh, he's better off the bench. No, Caleb Martin is just Caleb Martin. He is just going to be good in whatever role you put him in because he's a really good player. So I think you play your best guys. You don't play to kind of Denver's strengths. Like, you don't have to. You play your own game, and that's always been Spo's motto. So I don't think he starts, but I think maybe he gets kind of some innings eater kind of playing time.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Now, another question here. Okay, so this one is from Marty. He wants to know, you guys covering the Heat for 5 on the floor, or 5 Recent Sports rather. Did your life kind of change a little bit as those 3 losses against Boston piled up, games 4 to 6? Did you guys just feel like annoyed as each game passed by?
Having to talk about Heat losses and stuff, yeah, that was rough. I think it was mostly for me, Alex, and Greg. I feel like Ethan's a true professional. He's ready to crank out a podcast after another one, so he's good to go. But yeah, those loss podcasts after one or after another. Shouts to Greg though, because he never lost guts. So that's a true professional even right there, because he never lost any guts. But yeah, it was tough. I mean, we all grew up, we all are and started as Heat fans. So it's like there's still an element to it when you're seeing being on the wrong side of history stuff. It's
yeah,
it was tough.
nuts.
But hey, look where they ended up.
It's nuts. It's nuts. Okay, this one's from Charlie. He wants to know if you think the Heat will continue putting a premium in creating turnovers like they did against the Knicks and the Celtics, even if that means risking Jokic's superb passing beating you.
It's tough. I feel like you have to force turnovers, but I'm more worried, honestly, about Miami kind of committing turnovers, because you cannot let Denver get out on the break. You cannot let them do that type of stuff. So I'm more worried about that side of things. But yeah, I mean, you always have to turn them over. They're not a team that's probably going to turn over a ton. I mean, if you force Jokic to be a playmaker, there's gonna be times where he's threading the needle and you can go in the other direction. And there's times where if there's a guy that's going to force turnovers in this series specifically, it's Jimmy Butler, because he's going to be the guy that, obviously that's an obvious statement, but it's the reason is because you're putting him with Aaron Gordon most likely to kind of help off a lot of the time. And what does he do better than anything? Like, I think there's one thing that Jimmy Butler does anything better than anything on a basketball court, and that's when a big man has the ball and he looks away, Jimmy kind of helps over and gets that behind the back steal type of thing. There's nothing better than that. Like, he is just an artist in that range. So if you can force turnovers in that way and force Jokic kind of as a hub to be that type of guy, it's a tough thing to do. It really is, because they're a high-powered offense. It was easier against teams like the Knicks because there was more guys to pick on in terms of like helping off this guy. Denver doesn't have as many guys because they have a bunch of shooting, and obviously these are the 2 best 3-point shooting teams in the playoffs, and that's not a coincidence. Like, that's what happens when you shoot the 3 ball well. So, but yeah, they have to try to turn the ball over, and that's going to be kind of my earlier point about not having a defensive base, switching it up on a possession-to-possession basis, mixing in drops, switching, etc. They just have to mix things up.
Awesome. Hey, listen, Brady. I have been watching Heat games since the late 2000s. The last finals game in Miami was 2013. Ironically, Game 7. They won the championship. Were you already watching the Heat at that point?
Yeah, I was 10 years old though, so I was just a big fan.
Jesus, man, how far you've come. But anyway, I say that because I'm excited for you to get the chance to cover this team live game 3 of the NBA Finals in Miami. I'm sure it's going to be the opportunity of a lifetime. And you know what? You deserve it. And I want to thank you for coming on this podcast and talking hoops with me. This was amazing. I appreciate it. Before I let you go, do you want to share what you might have coming up soon to some of the listeners?
Well, thank you for having me on. At Brady Hawk 305 on Twitter. We have 5 on the floor episodes, multiple a day now that they're heading up into the finals, and that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Hey, appreciate you, Brady. Really, thank you for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.